if you wanted to use the bathroom, you had to raise your hand, and you got to go to a bathroom that was blocked off by one curtain to get into just one curtain blocked it, and then the shower curtain. But in the bathroom, the toilet area, it was curtain, and you had to count while you used the bathroom. You had 4 minutes, 2 minutes, 4 minutes for number 1, 7 minutes for number 2, and you can only use a pen that was wrapped in duct tape and a spoon so that you couldn't self-harm yourself, and I didn't have self-harming issues. He gave me an essay for things like breaking boundaries and flatulating, which means farting. I literally had to write 300 words on why I farted. Excuse me?
Natural bodily function.
Right?
You were in trouble for not holding that in and giving yourself bloated gas and diarrhea.
Oh, and if you have to go to the hospital for something like that, you can get an 8,000 word essay for not following medical direction. Hi guys, welcome to our video. I'm Conrad. I'm her favorite brother.
Did you almost say and only?
Yeah, but then I realized we have another brother. That was so funny. Sorry, brother, who's watching this.
He does watch these.
I know, that's so fun, right? You have such a supportive family.
I know, it's so nice to me.
I know. Yeah, so I'm Conrad. So the past video says you guys should be watching all our videos, was Riley, and that is my biological sister.
Hold on. That wasn't explained very well. Can I re-say what you just said?
Yes.
I could have said that in a nicer way. I apologize.
That was really rude. I'm just kidding. I don't really take it that way.
No. So he's saying that the last time that I had a sit-down video right here, kind of podcast style, it was with our sister, Riley. And that's the one where she kind of talked about her upbringing and just her life and how it relates to the church. And for those of you who don't know, if you haven't been here before, we are technically, according to like our records in the church, we are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Do you still have your records?
My records are still in.
Really? Are you gonna take them out?
I'm probably going to remove them. I've lost my faith in the church. My younger sister did as well, and that's kind of like what that podcast was about, and I'll put it in the cards up here. But she kind of talked about her deconstruction and all of that, and that was a really good video. And she lives like 4 hours away from me, and so it was nice to be able to sit down and film that with her. And then he also lives about 4 hours away from me.
Yeah.
So and that's even like recent, because before you were like 12 hours away from me, or 14. But yeah, we'll get into that. But so he's here visiting, and it's not like a normal thing. He's not always here. And you know, he's got a lot going on in his life, and he likes to talk about it. He's like very friendly, like you like to chat, and we're really similar. We're very emotional. We
definitely have that vibe going where it's like, I'm gonna cry, give me like 5 minutes, let me go to my bathtub and cry, and then we're like, okay, now let's go to Target. Yeah,
like we like a good cry. We connect with other people. We like to I think we connect with other people more when you can connect on an emotional level and share like deep stuff from your life. I think, I don't know, we're just like that.
I'm also the youngest sibling.
Yeah, he's the youngest out of 5
I was a baby,
kids.
And it was like honestly everything for me because it like fits my personality being the youngest child, because I literally was spoiled, which was so nice. I loved it. And Payton was like my love and supporter through everything in my life, and still honestly to this day is. Okay, so yeah, I'm the youngest sibling, and Payton has always supported me, even as I go through some faith challenges right now. She's always been someone who I can come and talk to, and as I'm deconstructing my faith and also separating myself from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, she's been a really great support and a person to come talk to. That has been everything for me. She's my icon, she's my everything. Yeah, so why don't we get into the video?
I do have a disclaimer. What?
Did you just spill coffee on your blanket?
No.
Oh, okay.
I do have a disclaimer that I really feel is important in this video, and I want to get it out there, like, first and foremost, so that, you know, if you don't make it through the whole video, I just want to make sure people know this, because this is really important to me. So listen. there is nothing that I did to intentionally influence Conrad in relation to his faith by any means. I upload videos talking about my faith and my deconstruction of the religion. If you watch my if you watch my part 1 faith crisis video, which I'll also add to the cards, you will see that I'm still very, very like a believing member of the church. And I talked about how there's nothing that could ever convince me otherwise. And now I'm not there at all. Now I believe in science. Now I'm not sure what is even there after we die. Anyway, I'm over explaining, but I've been putting that stuff out there, and I've had a lot of people reach out to me, thanking me, loving that I'm putting that out there, and being able to have somebody to relate to on the internet who is going through the same thing that they are, making people feel less alone. I have friends and family who are kind of like curious about what's going on, and they like to listen to, you know, what I've been reading or listening to and what information I've been getting and why it's influencing me in one direction or the other. So that's why I post on the internet. I have not gone out and talked to people, talked to you, talked to anybody and said, hey, guess what about the church? You need to know blah, blah, blah. And you're in this like false place. And let me tell you about this and that. Never. Not once. I don't do that. I don't seek out to destroy people's faith or testimony in the church. That is not my intention by any means. I did not go to Conrad and tell him anything about anything. He actually sent me a text message saying, oh my gosh, look at this. And it was a PDF link to the CES letter.
Yeah.
I never told him anything about it. He didn't know that I knew about it. He's like, look at this. Have you seen this? This is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, I know all about that. Like, I've seen that. So I really want to put it out there that there was nothing that I didn't go to Conrad and say anything. Like, this all happened on his own. And he has just been able to come to me and talk about it and open up about it because he feels comfortable and safe talking to me about it, considering I'm kind of going through the same thing right now. And I'm just like a little bit further along in that process. So I just really, really wanted to make that clear because I don't want any friends or family or anybody to think that I was out here like seeking to destroy people's testimony or faith in the church. I don't want to do that. It's literally the worst feeling in the world.
Yeah, honestly, no, it's crazy. And I've had people be like, when I've told them about like me deconstructing my faith and separating myself, they're like, it's because you watch your sister's videos, it's because of this and that. And I'm like, I've literally only seen like 2 of your long videos.
Yeah.
One of them wasn't even a faith crisis one. The only faith crisis video of yours I've watched was the one with my sister Riley, because we don't chat that much and I wanted to be updated on her. And I watch her TikToks and her YouTube shorts because that's kind of what I do. Like, I like short-term media, not like long.
Yeah.
I've only seen clips of her faith crisis, so I hadn't really followed her too much onto it until I started watching Mormon Stories podcast. Mormon Stories literally sponsored me. I'll give my TikTok later.
So I don't think they sponsor people.
Yes, they do. Okay.
You could say invite me onto your podcast.
Invite me on your podcast, and you would be shook at the information that I provide.
I've talked to John Dehlin, actually.
No, you have not.
I promise. I'll show you the messages on
God.
Facebook. We talk back and forth. He asked me to send him an outline of like my faith's journey and story, like, because I was interested in being on his podcast, and he said that he was very interested. I also talked to him about Colin's mom, because Colin's mom has been through a lot, and I was like, I think you would really enjoy her story, and she was so down for it. She's like, yeah, if you wanted me on the podcast, I would go on. And I was so shocked. So I told him about it, and he's like, have her email me. He's like, here's my email. Have her send me like all of this, the info and everything.
Literally give me his email, because I would literally jump off a bridge to speak to him. Like, I will walk.
That's like dying, though. That doesn't make sense.
I didn't say how high the bridge was.
I would injure myself just
I
to
would.
talk
I would
about
definitely. I would totally dislocate my shoulder to speak to him. He's literally like. But anyways.
Yeah, he's super overworked right now and is wanting to take a break. That's like actually going on right now.
I
on
literally.
YouTube.
Yeah.
Anyway, this has nothing to do with this.
So I literally started kind of deconstructing based off of the Mormon Stories podcast, and they don't even there. People are like, oh, false doctrine. I'm like, they literally, like, John is like always questioning. He's always questioning what he's saying and make sure that he's correct. And they don't really often put the church down more. They just bring light and they like explain things. Yeah.
They intentionally make their podcast a place where they want people who are active believing members to feel safe and comfortable listening to their podcast. Like, they intentionally are like, we don't like bash the church and say all of these horrible things. We want active believing members to be able to like also listen and enjoy our content and maybe learn from it, but not, you know, feel attacked or something like that. That's what they definitely say things that where I feel like people could not want to hear it, because many people don't want to even listen to like a single thought of something being like odd in the church. They're like, no, I'm leaving. Like, so they're very, very respectful. And I've had people tell me like, really, you are not believing in the church because of a podcast you listen to, because of a TikTok? Like, people are so judgmental and mean about it. And I'm like, people can say things on the internet that are true just as much as people can say things on the internet that are false. I'm not an idiot. I don't just take in this information and I'm like, oh, that's true, like immediately. Like, most of them will tell you like, here's the resource, go to the churchofjesuschrist.org and look at their gospel topics essays. It is in here. They tell you, they give you the actual like resources on where they found this information and all of their like proof, and you can go in and find all that. And they always say on the podcast too, they say, do not take my word for any of this. I don't want you to listen to me and just be like, oh my gosh, and just believe everything. He's like, because that's not smart.
Yeah.
He says, go look and research it yourself. That's what he says.
Crazy.
And I was not seeking to find bad information. I was seeking to find truth, answers. I thought this was going to be like a faith building experience,
right?
And it just happened to not go that way.
Yeah. I just
but yeah, I want you to share your story, like about, you know, just your life growing up and just whatever you feel comfortable sharing.
Yeah. Okay. So, ignore me moving my chair. Like every 5 minutes, I'm freaking ADHD.
This chair is really creaky. I am so sorry. Like, it is what it is.
Can I sip your drink? Anyways.
So start with your life story. Some of your earliest memories, like what was the family like, and be honest about good and bad and
but
whatever.
But if it's bad, I shouldn't use names.
Yeah, if you're gonna speak negatively about something, a person or a business, I would recommend not, exposing them. But if you're going to talk positively about them, I think
I actually think because a lot of my stuff has negative and positives, I'm just going to leave names out of it. So this is kind of like, I'm not going to be using names in here because I don't want to offend anybody, especially because I could out people and that could be like bad for their reputation. Like, it's like, just because I had a bad experience with them doesn't mean that everybody should have to. I think my earliest memory would start off with, it's so young. I was in this house and my dad went to go to work and I was just bawling my eyes out that he went to work. And it was kind of weird.
Sad?
Yeah, I don't, like, and that's kind of interesting. That's just my first memory. But basically I grew up and as I don't remember much of really being young. And it's kind of gaps, but I just remember that one of my family members, I had a very similar experience, as my sister and both my sisters, where I was abused sexually, and I don't have many memories of that, but I have just a couple, and that family member I'm actually really, really close with now. And I actually love them so much and they mean so much to me and I totally relate on where they're coming from and like every experience. It was just like, I think it was just like a hard time, you know what I mean? And I kind of remember like we went to Disneyland and then we came back and I never saw him again.
Yeah, so your experience with like when he ended up going to jail, you didn't really know why. You were confused, like where he
Yeah,
was at. He wasn't around anymore.
Yeah, I just remember I was, I like, between the gap of time, I remember we went to Disneyland, and then on our way back, and we were back home, and I was just like, where's that's all I remember. So that's all I remember, and then I would remember Mom would call him up and be like, happy birthday. And I was like, that's when I realized, that's like my memories of when I remembered.
Yeah,
something.
like all of a sudden you didn't see him around and you didn't really know why, but then you would hear our mom talking with him on the phone, like for happy birthday and all these things, and you're like, okay, so he's still alive.
Yeah.
Like, where is
And
he?
then I think it was Payton, and I just grew up with all siblings. So my siblings, I like knew things. I mean, I was told a lot growing up that babies come out of the belly button, and that was super weird to me. I remember, but
I felt like you knew a lot about
Yeah.
things as a little boy earlier than most people. Like, I remember I'd be packing to go to a sleepover with a friend when I was like 11 or 12. And Conrad would come and he'd bring me pads and tampons and be like, here, you need to pack these.
yeah.
And I was like, what? Like,
I was just like, because I grew up with all sisters, so I knew what that kind of stuff was. I just remember growing up, and I remember sitting down, and Mom told me, she was like, hey, this is how sex works. And I was like,
you had a sex talk with Mom?
yeah, and I was like, Peyton and Riley already told me.
Yeah, I don't think,
Yeah.
like, I feel like you're the only one that had a talk then.
I think she just that felt like it was important that she sat down and told me, and I was like,
Was it after this family member was gone?
oh yeah.
I wonder if that's why.
It was like, it was pretty late. I had it happen like 8 years old, I think. Or a little longer.
Let's see. 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. You were 4.
When he left.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyways.
Riley was 8.
Yeah. Anyways, I don't remember much about that time. But we're going to kind of move past a couple of years as, like, I went through primary, right? And
Some people won't know what primary is when you just say that.
So I went to primary, and primary is, like, Sunday school for the young children from the ages of when you're, like, 4 all the way to,
Oh, it's 3 actually.
3.
No.
Damn, correct.
I know.
3 to 11.
Yeah.
And yeah, so I went to primary. I would literally go up and do the S&P. I remember S&P is singing program, and it's when
A sacrament meeting program, I think.
okay, well, thank you.
I think.
Okay, anyways, it's when the whole primary sorry, it's when the whole it's when the entire program gets up. The whole primary gets up. They go up to the stands and they
on the
sing.
stage, like
Yeah.
in front of the church.
And they would sing, and it was everything kind of. And
I was always so excited to do that when I
Right.
was in primary.
Because me and Peyton,
I
we love
loved it.
singing.
We would memorize, like, because we would also have little lines with, like, scriptures or stories, and people would have to memorize things. And the older you were, like, the longer of a thing you would get. And our mom would, like, reward us if we memorized ours and were able to, like, get up there and not have to read it from the script. If we could just say it, she would reward us. And I actually got really good at memorizing.
Oh my gosh,
I'm
same.
good at memorizing right now.
I am too.
Like scripts or anything you give me, I can memorize it pretty in like a couple hours.
Yeah, so basically I would do that. Remember, I love singing, I love dancing. I was always just like fun and about having the best time of my life, joking around. I loved attention. It was just kind of a great time for me, and I was really close to my mom. But I just remember not having the best relationship, I guess, growing up with my dad, just because it felt more like disciplinary. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think you and I are really similar where we're a little bit more tender-hearted and sensitive and emotional. So if there's something that is kind of like stern, it can make us feel like kind of small.
Yeah.
And I think being stern as a parent is definitely something that is like normal for a parent.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, all kids are different. And
Yeah.
you and I were just a little bit more emotional where that was something that was kind of hard.
Anyways, I just remember not having the best memories kind of growing up. and with certain people and just trying to move forward.
Certain family members.
Yeah, and I was just really, really close with my mom and Peyton. And that was all good for me. I was fine until my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and this was probably one of the hardest moments of my life. Actually, kind of. It was really difficult for me because of how close I was. We would watch the same show over and over. We were inseparable. If you saw my mom in her room and I was home, I was in her room too. You knew where to find me, I was there with her. And we were super duper close. And I just remember that when I found out, my heart told me she'll be fine. And she actually was the first stage. The first time that she had it. And it actually ended up going away, and a lot of people doubted that would happen. And I was like, I know it's gonna happen.
She went into remission.
Yeah. I knew that we were gonna be okay for a while. And just in my heart that I just knew. And at that time I was like, God told me. Then moving forward,
When she was
re-diagnosed, I knew that it was kind of over. And one day in particular, I was hanging out with my friend, and I came home, and I remember she had a new oxygen mask. She was on higher levels of oxygen. And all this stuff, and I realized, like, oh my goodness, like.
Was this when I still lived at home, or was I not there anymore?
I don't think you were there anymore.
I remember having a journal entry at home when I still lived at home with you guys. I have a journal entry that says, like, I just have the biggest feeling that I need to prepare for my mom's death.
Really?
Yeah. Which, how do you prepare?
You can't.
You can't.
Anyways, I just knew it was going to go downhill from there, and I was right. Within 6 months, she was not able to speak. She would write on whiteboards to talk to people. She couldn't get up and go to the bathroom. Like, she literally had to, like, she had, like, a mini bathroom thing next to her bed. Like, we had family members coming down all the time to, like, literally say bye. And, like, I didn't really know how to react to that when I would see family members come down, and I knew that was the last time they were going to see her.
Yeah, people were traveling from far away
Yeah.
so that they could say bye to her before she passed away.
Yeah, and I remember cards came in, and people were like, we miss you, we're going to miss you, we love you, like, and it wasn't, like, it was weird, because when I see cards for people who are like, it's a get well soon.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. Can you start that sentence? When I see cards?
Yeah, I'm just going to explain it.
No, I just didn't.
Oh.
You said, I heard when I see cards, and then it was like, blah, 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 and I didn't hear what you were saying.
When I see cards for people who are sick, it says, get well soon.
Mm-hmm.
And these weren't saying that. They were saying, we'll miss you, we love you. Not because,
like,
and I was like, hello?
Till we meet again.
I know, I was like 11, I think. 12, maybe.
And she wasn't scared to die.
And that was really weird to see because I was terrified. And
I have a question for you.
what?
What was harder? Watching mom basically not being able to do normal human things, or the actual day of her death?
The day of her death? Definitely. That day, and especially, and I'll explain why in 1 minute.
Yeah.
But basically, I remember I have this really good family friend, and her name was Allison. She's my aunt's best friend. And I remember I was like, wake me up when it happens. And she woke me up and she goes, it's time to say goodbye. And I remember going in there and I was kind of alone. Like, not many people were in there at this time.
Was this early in the morning, the day of her actual death?
Yeah. And she was on this medication that you take that you get injected into you, in which you are there, but you can't move or talk or kind of feel. And it's like to kind of keep you alive until you're ready and everybody else is ready. That's kind of how I explain it.
Can I share a memory that I have for this time?
Yeah.
So, the night before she died, you know how you were talking about, like, how she couldn't speak and all of this stuff?
I was about to share something. I think I know what you're gonna say.
My dad came in the room crying late at night, saying, it's happening. and he was crying.
Yeah, and he
was
not
like
cry.
Almost like sobbing. To this day, like I've never seen him ever cry like that in my life.
Yeah.
And I basically like, I don't know, I was kind of like in shock, but also like you kind of expecting it when she is the way that she is. And so I had like run up and I had gone in there and I was trying to help her. She kept saying she was like hot. She was like trying to show that she's hot. And so she was trying to take like clothes off. And I remember like kind of like holding on to her and I was just crying my eyes out.
Yeah.
And she seemed like a little bit delirious, but then like when I was telling her that I loved her, she told me that she loved me too.
I'm about to go into something very similar.
So that's the last thing that she said to me. That was our last thing. And the following day when she did pass away, I was supposed to be having my baby shower with Kinley. I was pregnant with Kinley, my first baby, who's 3 right now, 3.5. It was my baby shower day, and so we had to like send out a thing that telling everybody not to come because my mom just passed away. We kind of had to. And
basically, she was on this med, and she was not able to speak, and she was just laying there, so helpless looking. And I went in there and I grabbed her hand and I felt her close it, and she was not supposed to be able to move. People were supposed to move her. And I was like, Mom, I love you so much. Like, I'm gonna miss you like so much. And she's like, Conrad, my baby, I love you so much. And I was like, oh. Because she literally was like, the way she said, she's like, Conrad, my baby, I love you so much. And she literally was my world and my light. And at that moment, my light that I always had in me felt like it just turned off. Like it was like a flicker, and I've never had it turn off really, but it felt like.
When she said that she loved you, you felt bad?
No, when she said that she loved me, and then like 2 hours later she passed away.
You were in there early in the morning with her?
Yeah, and this was when Allison came and woke me up and said, it's time to come say goodbye.
Because it was about like 7 a.m. around that time when she did go.
Yeah, this had to have been at like 3 a.m. And
oh, wow.
Yeah, Allison came and got me, I don't know, and she was just like, it's time to say goodbye. Then she came and got me again later after I went back to sleep, and I went in there and it finally happened, like she finally passed away.
Yeah.
And
Dad came in and got me when it had happened, so she was gone.
And I just was like,
I remember Dad was letting you eat like a Snickers bar or something for breakfast. You were eating some type of like candy.
Yeah.
Like sitting in the room where Mom was like covered in a sheet. My dad like covered her up so that it wasn't just like you could see her there. He covered her with a sheet, but I remember you eating some candy bar and he wasn't saying anything. And I knew dang well it was because of everything that was going on. He was not about to just say something about you eating a candy bar for breakfast. He's like, that's the least of my worries. Like, whatever. And
that was not.
That's very kind.
Yeah. We kind of grew up eating like pretty healthy and like stuff like that. But just like my heart flickered, and I remember that part of my life, I just went downhill pretty fast. Basically, I had just gotten into middle school, and at that time, I had started doing things, and I lost my temple recommend really quickly.
Hold on, you're covering your mouth, so the audio might be bad.
I lost my temple recommend at that time.
What's a temple recommend?
I'm gonna go into that.
Okay, I'm just upset. I'm just making sure. I didn't know what's in your mind.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to be mean.
That's okay.
I got a temple recommend, and I had gotten it just taken away. Temple recommend is basically a piece of paper, and you go in, and there's a list of questions that your bishop is to ask you, and you are to answer yes or no to them. And those questions varied from, do you sustain all of our prophets as...
All of our prophets?
Do you sustain the prophet as the one and only true person to be a revelator of God? And do you follow sexual purity standards? Do you follow the word of wisdom? And just
I think, is there one about like Joseph Smith restoring
Yeah.
the church?
There's
Something
one where
that?
it's like, do you sustain Joseph Smith as the founder as like the person who restored it?
Questions are like slightly different once
Yeah.
you've been married and through the temple. There's a couple different things,
Yeah.
so I was just kind of trying to remember what it
And
is before that.
The temple just, I remember I wasn't able to go anymore, and that was kind of hard for me because I never wanted to tell my parents why.
So a bishop would take away a temple recommend if you weren't able to answer the questions like all correctly, basically. And it's not like you didn't have a knowledge. It was like, say like the sexual purity one, for example, and you're like, oh, well, technically I did this. And they're like, okay, well, you're not worthy to have this. You can't go into our temple because our temple is for people who are, you know, pure, like faithful, true, like, you know, clean. No unclean thing can enter into the temple. So if you're doing things that are against the church, he can take that away from you and you no longer will have access to the temple.
Yes.
And so what he's saying is he was in talking with a bishop, and basically whatever he was talking about caused the bishop to take the recommend from him and like restricted his access to the temple while he's going through like a repentance process to become better. And then you said you didn't want to tell anyone about like what it was or how.
Yeah, and it was interesting because he would take the temple recommend and restrict you from going to the temple, as well as passing the sacrament, which sacrament is, we have bread and water, and it's to represent the flesh and blood that Jesus Christ, it allows us to atone for our sins, which basically means those things that our church are commandments of the church. Those, if we break those commandments and we take these and we have a sincere heart, that those sins no longer matter and that we are now able to go back into being perfect.
Yeah, I was always taught that the sacrament was basically like you were being baptized all over again. Like when you faithfully take it with a sincere heart, knowing that you are doing everything that, you know, the church talks about, and you follow the teachings, and like you are a faithful believing member who takes the sacrament, that it was like you were being baptized again and all your sins were washed away. That's what I was always taught with that.
Anyways, I remember just that being it, and the way that my family member actually found out about how I lost my temple recommend was because we were in church and he said, why don't you go sit with everybody else? Because there's two sections where the people who hold the priesthood, or the people who are allowed to pass the sacrament, sit. And he goes, why don't you go up there? And I go, I can't. And he's like, why? I was like, let's talk about it later. And he's like, okay. And like for 2 Sundays before that, I had been sick. I literally just did not want to go. I could not. And my sister actually knew. I had told her previously before I told one of my family members. And so she was just like
she was hearing the conversation between you and the other family member who like didn't know, and she was like, oh, this is awkward.
She was like, yeah, because she didn't know.
There's a lot of shame and judgment around it.
Definitely, and that was the hardest part for me. After that church meeting.
Hold on, I just realized we didn't mention that when you get your temple recommend taken away and you're in a repentance process, we started talking about the sacrament because when they take that away, you are also no longer allowed to partake of the sacrament. You cannot eat the bread and drink the water in church like everybody else does, where it's kind of like you're being rebaptized. In a way, that's kind of how it was explained to me. They say that you're not allowed to, because like basically you're not worthy to take it, and because you have been doing bad things or something. And so when people see that you're not eating the bread or drinking the water, they just start assuming that like you did bad things.
And if you can't go to the temple, I don't know if people realize that, but so the questions in the temple recommend interview can range anywhere from word of wisdom, which involves certain types of tea, coffee, and some people believe caffeine. Like some people generally.
Some people think that, yeah.
And then sexual purity could be anywhere from pornography to masturbation to even lustful thoughts and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah, and in the lustful thoughts, a lot of it will depend on the bishop as well. Because some bishops will be like, won't take the temple recommend, even with some of these difficulties, and they might just have you come in and counsel with them and like see how you're doing and want to like help you and guide you. And then there might be other bishops who feel that it is that they need it taken away, that like it's to a certain level where okay, that was pretty bad. But it depends on the bishop.
So I remember my biggest fear was the reason I actually ended up going to the bishop and like risking getting in trouble and stuff like that and telling him everything that I was struggling with was because I was scared I was going to go to hell and like Satan was going to take my soul from me or whatever. But the weird thing that I always thought about was like, so if I drink coffee, I can't go to heaven? Because like, if you don't go through the temple and get your endowments out and you are knowing about it, like you knew what the temple was and you grew up in it and you chose not to, then you literally can't go to heaven. In their eyes, in their view. Basically, I lost my temple recommend and I did not get it back until I was 15 years old.
How long is that from when you went?
I think I lost it when I was 12, so I was like 3 years. I didn't have it for like 3 years. Basically, my dad, can I say that? He got remarried. Mm-hmm. Yeah, my dad got remarried pretty quickly after my mom had passed away. I think it was a little less than a year that they actually like initiated a wedding ceremony and were married. And I was just going down a different path and I had made some mistakes. I was also 12 and I had got sent to pretty much a military school or a residential treatment center in Utah. And it's so close to where we live. It is literally so close to us.
We live 4 hours apart.
What do you mean?
You said that it's really so close to us and we live 4 hours apart, so it can't be close to both of us.
Right now. It's close to us right now. Like where we are physically in geography of the planet system, we are close to the residential treatment center.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
I'm so extra. Anyways, I went to this place and I was not expecting it to be what it was. And about a month before that, I went and lived with my sister Brianna. And a month before I went to this treatment center, I had gotten removed from my house. I lived with Brianna. I went to this treatment center and I was 12 years old. And I was not expecting it to be what it was. What?
You went to the treatment center at 12?
13. My bad.
Really?
I was 13.
But you're 16 right now. That would have been 3 years ago.
I turned 16 outside of the treatment center.
Yeah, no, you just turned 16.
I was 13 and then I went in there and I turned 14 in April and then I had my 15th birthday was on my 1 week visit. And it's been I've been out for almost 10 months. I was in there for 19 months. Yeah, cray, huh?
Carry on.
I went in there when I was 13 and I said bye to my dad because my dad drove me up here. And I was not expecting it to be what it was. But I remember as soon as my dad left, I went into group, which is basically where all the kids sit in a square of chairs and listen to the program director talk. And he just shares messages and stuff like that. And it didn't seem too bad until at the end of group, a staff grabbed me and brought me over into the middle of the commons area, sat me in a chair and shaved all my hair off in front of everybody. Just all my hair gone. And I had long hair. Like my hair's pretty long right now. I have not cut it since then, but
did everybody have to?
Yeah, everybody did. And each level you got longer hair. But I'm talking about it was like the clippers have different sizes, right? 1, 2, 3, and like sizes like by centimeter, I think.
Wait, they would regularly shave your head?
Every 2 weeks, they would shave our head, and they buzzed my head all the way off, and it was like kind of traumatizing for me because I was like, really attached to my hair. In front of everybody, and I was like, I literally went to the shower and I cried in the shower because you shower right after. And that night was a Friday. It was Friday the 13th of 2022. too.
Friday the 13th.
I swear, I'm not even joking. And my visit was also on Friday the 13th. My first visit. Christ.
Spooky.
That it was a Friday, so we got to watch a movie because we got to watch movies on Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays. And it was just kind of it felt so long that day. I didn't want to eat my first meal because I was like, this looks gross. And the staff was like, if you don't eat it, that's your dinner. And I was like, okay. I finished that. I got my snack. You were not allowed to have socks for your first while, so I did not have socks on. And you sat at the staff table, which is also in the commons, and you were not allowed to talk to anybody.
What's the commons? Like, because even me sitting right here, some of the things that you're saying, I don't know what you mean.
If you say something I don't understand, just tap my hand.
What's the commons?
The commons is the center area. It's where not the library. It wasn't
the main room?
Okay. Basically, it was about the size of a restaurant, and the middle of the facility was called the commons, so where everybody ate. We ate at tables, just lifetime tables, pretty much. No tablecloths or anything like that. And then there was the kitchen, and then there was like a couple bookshelves full of books. We could not read fiction books. We could not talk to each other. There was something called CBO, communication blockout. You were not allowed to speak to another student. You were not allowed to make eye contact with another student, no matter your level, nothing. You could not snap. You could not talk to yourself out loud. You could not make noises out loud. You cannot click with your mouth. You cannot make sounds.
What if you burp or fart?
If you fart, you have to say, I flatulated to a staff and hold yourself accountable. And if you burp, you were okay. You could burp inside your bedroom, not outside. If you're outside your bedroom and you burped, you had bad manners and you had to hold yourself accountable.
Was this 24/7?
Yes.
Could never talk to anybody or look to anybody ever.
I'm going to continue on with why.
Well, that's why I asked, is it 24/7? You just said yes.
Yes, except for during free time, which we got about an hour of free time on... we got an hour of free time once a week normally, where we can communicate with each other.
So one time a week, you were allowed to open your mouth and speak and talk to people, but there was no talking?
No, you can only talk to staff, you cannot get off topic, so you can only hold yourself accountable and ask questions about the program. You couldn't even ask them questions about school, and you could talk to teachers during school time about the class, but you could not get off topic. If you got off topic, you had to hold yourself accountable.
It just didn't seem like that at all during the graduation thing.
I'm going to explain why, because it gets better towards the end. I'm going to keep going. So, that was till level 3. And there's 5 levels. And level 1 means you have no privileges. No condiments on your food. Actually, I need to go back. I need to continue further. I was on the staff table until we had group. And he decided I can have a shadow. The program director said, you can have a shadow. A shadow is where you have one student and you are with that student 24/7, and if you get out of boundaries, which is 7 tiles in the facilities, then you're out of boundaries.
I don't know what that means, 7 tiles.
Like there were tiles on the ground, and each tile was about 1 foot long, so if you got like more than 7 feet away, your shadow's like you got out of boundaries. You have to go tell the staff that you got out of boundaries. And hold yourself accountable for getting out of boundaries. And my shadow was really cool, but we ended up sitting down and talking at one point, because you could talk to your shadow while you were with him and under his watch. And I remember he goes, he was talking to me about the hit and run thing, or if a student tries to run away from the facility, and you could do it in any means what you want to catch them, no matter how, in what way.
Yeah, even as
of level 1, as a shadow, no matter what. If somebody tries to run away and you catch them, you get something called the steak and lobster dinner. You can pick anywhere to go, and here's exactly the words I said. I go, I should run and catch myself. And he goes, come with me. And he stood up, and we walked to the supervisor, and he said, my shadow projected to run. Basically said I said something that sounded like I was going to try to run away. And the supervisor said, give me your, I didn't even have socks at that point still. And he said, okay, you're on high risk DNP suspension, which is, I grabbed my lifetime chair because that's the chair you get. And they had this whole wall out in the commons where everybody was. And you faced the wall, literally like this. If you looked off to the side, it was called fisheyeing, and you had to raise your hand and hold yourself accountable. If you wanted to use the bathroom, you had to raise your hand. and you got to go to a bathroom that was blocked off by one curtain to get into just one curtain blocked it, and then the shower curtain. But in the bathroom, the toilet area, it was curtain, and you had to count while you used the bathroom. You had 4 minutes, 4 minutes for number 1, 7 minutes for number 2, and staff were watching. You have to say 1, 2, 3, 4 behind the curtain while you use the bathroom. And
I feel like I'd be like so trying to focus on counting and then going at the same time.
Yeah, and you had to be watched by a staff while you used the bathroom. Then you would be escorted back to your seat. While on high risk, you had to be arm escorted, which means the staff held your arm here and here and walked you everywhere that you went. And if the staff told you to walk without having them on your arm, you had to say, "I can't do that," 3 times. And then you had to ask to write a note to a supervisor. No, you had to ask to write a note to the program director saying that a staff made you break a rule. It was cray. And you can only use a pen that was wrapped in duct tape and a spoon so that you couldn't self-harm yourself, and I didn't have self-harming issues. And it was crazy.
Can you explain what you just said about wrapping a spoon in a pen?
Basically, they had a pen like this, and they would put a spoon on it, and they would wrap it. I don't know what the point of the spoon was.
How does that prevent self-harm?
I don't actually know. It was very weird.
If anybody here knows what he's talking about, and then comment below.
Yes, please.
Please explain, because that's so confusing.
And it was almost impossible to write with, but I was on DNP, so I could not write anything except for letters on Sundays, which staff read and went through. And
it's a little bit like jail.
Yeah.
I only know that because of our family member who was in jail.
And basically, when you went to sleep, your bed was brought out to the commons, which was already anyways, it took a while for you to be allowed to go into a room. At night, your bed would be brought out to the commons, and because I was on high risk, I did not get a pillow or a blanket, so all I slept on was a mattress with a sheet, and the mattresses were probably $40. They were horrible, they were trash, they were garbage. And I was freezing cold, and...
You don't get blankets? Is that what you said?
No, because I was on high risk. I was on that for 3 days, where you could not look up the wall. For breakfast, you get 2 apples and a bowl of oatmeal. For lunch, you get 4 pieces of whole wheat bread and 4 pieces of American cheese, as well as 2 apples. And for dinner, you can have the normal thing that everyone has except for a snack, which normally was a Rice Krispie treat. Or a trail mix. I became obsessed with trail mix. So good.
Trail mix is pretty good.
I know.
I feel like it's
underrated. It totally is. And especially when you don't get it and you watch everyone else. You could not look up the wall. That was 24/7 until you went to sleep. I think sleep was like 9:30.
So this would happen for 3 days because your shadow just wanted to show you what happened when that...
No, so basically because my shadow was talking to me about somebody runs and you catch them, I said I should run and catch myself. He told the supervisor that I was projecting to run. So he thought that I was going to run because I said that. That's why I got put on. Finally, I got taken off. Basically, I was on the shadow program for 9 months. Wait.
What's that?
Actually, 6 months. The shadow program is where you're with another person. And I had gone through about 7 shadows. I just had people who graduated or stuff like that. And I was on and off suspension all the time. For a really long time, I was on and off suspension. And there was a checklist of things you had to do. Like, you had to get your shoelaces. Because we ran almost 3 miles every single day outside on the track. And you had to go up for your shoelaces. So you had to go up for it in therapy groups where everybody would say, yes, you can have it, or I don't think you should because of this reason. And then you had to go up for it in big group. And it took me so long to get all that stuff checked off. We had this thing called a quote. The quote was about 700 words on average. We had to write it all down on a piece of paper. And then we had to...
What was it about?
It could have been anything as a poem to a motivational speech. And we had to write it down, and then we had to memorize every single word. Then we would go to...
I do think that there's positives to that.
Yeah, but we had to go to a staff, and if we had 2 hints, 4 words each, and otherwise we could not make a mistake. So if it was there...
I don't know what you mean by that.
I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
So basically, if the word was there, and I said theirs instead of there, that was wrong, and they would say nope, until you got it right. So if we couldn't get it right, then we'd say hint, and they would give us 4 words. So if I said, if the phrase was there is a dog, and I was stuck on theirs, and I said, hint, they would say, there is a dog, and then I'd have to go past there. We got 2 of those to work with. We couldn't make any other mistakes besides that. Or else we failed, and we got a consequence. Now, our consequences we got when we held ourselves accountable. And the consequences ranged anywhere from writing 300 words to 3,600 words, 3,600. I know a kid who got a 10,000 word essay. The essay went from introduction, so why you got the essay, to amends, how are you going to make up the essay? How are you going to make up for your actions? Prevention.
You had to write this with
Yes. Yeah. Prevention, what are you going to do to prevent this from happening? Application, how this will apply outside of the facility, and what I've learned from this essay, and then a conclusion. And each paragraph was 50 words long.
So the kid who got 10,000 words, he would have had to have multiple days in order to be able to do it.
So with each 300, you have 24 hours. So 300 was for phase 1, breaking boundaries, out of boundaries, stepping off the track. Basically, when we ran around the track, we could not step off because people might think we're trying to run away. But just a stepping off could be an accident.
The running track outside.
Yes. Stuff like that. And then 600s were for things like disrespect, which could be disagreeing with the staff, or not finishing your food. Stuff like that.
You had to eat all your food?
Yeah, and if you didn't finish it, you got a 600 for wasting food.
Do you serve yourself?
No. All the plates are portioned out. And you can't have more unless you get to go for seconds, which you have to have free time to do. With each 300, you lose 24 hours of free time. And people would get into like 16 months without free time, which means they didn't get to talk to people for an hour. But a lot of people, once you hit your level 2, you get a free time reset. If you had 5 or more essays in 1 week, and essays were so easy to get, if you had 5 or more essays in 1 week, you were on suspension on Monday, and normally you were on until Tuesday.
And what?
And normally you were on suspension until Tuesday. Suspension's where you're staring at a wall and you have to eat the food that's not good. And again, keep in mind we were not allowed to talk to each other. So after about 6 months, I finally had everything on my checklist passed off. I finally started getting a hang of the quote. I had finally stopped going on suspension as much, and I got off of suspension. And I had stopped going on suspension as much, and I finally was able to go up for flying solo, which means I did not have to be watched by a shadow anymore, and I did not have to use the bathroom where I had to count and be watched. And I was able to fly solo. So I'm still level 1, no privileges. I cannot hold other people accountable because level 2, 3s, 4s, and 5s can go out and be like, staff, this student broke this rule. That's called holding someone else accountable, and then the staff could probably give you an essay, or probably would give you an essay.
Would give you an essay for holding someone else accountable?
No, would give the person an essay for breaking the rule. And
if they held themselves accountable, they would still get an essay.
Yeah, but it was staff discretion. So if staff were like, that's not that bad. So there are different staffs that had different
opinions.
Yeah, so for example, there was just one staff, I'm not going to say his name, I absolutely hated him. He gave me an essay for things like breaking boundaries and flatulating, which means farting. I literally had to write 300 words on why I farted. Excuse me?
Natural bodily function.
Right?
You were in trouble for not holding that in and giving yourself bloated gas and diarrhea.
Oh, and if you have to go to the hospital for something like that, you can get an 8,000 word essay for not following medical direction.
Wait.
Yep.
Can you explain that to me more? Because if you have to go to the hospital because your brain starts bleeding and what?
I need my phone. I have to read something. Actually, I don't need my phone to know this. There was a student, way before I got there, who was screaming because he was also in high-risk DNP, locked in a room with 2 staff who had to watch him 24/7. Students were told not to acknowledge him or his existence. They could not say his name. They had to say, somebody I do not know, if they were acknowledging him. And that was very rare that you were allowed to acknowledge him for anything. This kid was in the room, slamming his head on the table, screaming. This kid had been taking ibuprofen for 8 months. And students would go and be like, someone I don't know is not in trouble, and they would get essays for acknowledging him. And staff were like, don't worry about it. Finally, staff had students carry the student into the facility van and drive him to the urgent care. The student died that night. And staff would not call the ambulance, refused to listen to anything. And this kid had a brain aneurysm and was bleeding out, and the staff said he was a faker. And another example was there was a student who got up out of his chair while on suspension without saying anything and got restrained and got his head cracked open, and the staff is now in jail because of that. Because he did that to a student.
Yeah. So that in particular wouldn't have been like a facility system flaw. It was like a staff member flaw.
Yeah, and they didn't want an open investigation, so it was kind of like that kind of stuff would happen. But let's say you just like if you had to go to the hospital because like you weren't doing something properly, like let's say like I don't know, it's just like it's kind of hard to explain, but like if you had to go see the nurse and the nurse gave you direction to do something and you didn't do that, you can get an 8,000. Like one kid got an ingrown toenail and had to go get it removed, and he wasn't supposed to get it wet. He got it wet and he had to write 8,000 words on why he got it wet, his foot wet, because he didn't follow medical direction while he was showering.
Why can't it be wet?
I don't know. But they weren't allowing him to have a plastic bag or anything. They were like, you have to deal with it, you have to figure out a way. Well, that student is probably still there.
He was there while you were there?
Yeah, he actually got there, I think he was there before I was there. And when I left, he was only a level 2. So in 19 months, he had only gotten to level 2.
How many? There's 5 levels?
5 levels. And it took me 9 months to get to level 2. Finally, I got to level 2. After lots of suspension, lots of getting in trouble, lots of struggles, it just wasn't it. And I remember once you get level 2, you get a 1-day visit. So a parent will come get you in the morning while you're running on the track, and everybody's like, oh my gosh, I love that he got to go. But they can't say that. All they get to say is good job, name of student, and that's it. That's the only communication we were allowed to have at that point. And
are you allowed to say thank you?
I think once you go on a visit, you're off CBO, so you could be like, thank you, but that's it. So I remember I was running on the track and my dad came out and I was like, freaking out. Right, I sprinted off the track and ran to himself. I was like, girl, Usain Bolt did not run as fast as me.
Who?
Usain Bolt. The famous, infamous Olympic runner, Usain Bolt.
Sorry.
You don't know who that is? No, you're joking. And I got to go out with him, and I literally came back to the facility at like 6 because my dad had to work and I had to get on an airplane to go home. So I didn't even get a very long visit with him.
You're starting to talk kind of quiet and how to get the airplane as well. But
yeah,
the camera needs to hear you.
It wasn't a long visit, but that was cray. I went on my one day and I did really, really good. And after I reviewed it and all that stuff, and I had been doing good and I had the points, my therapist said he's ready for level 3. And I get my level 3 sheet and you have to pass stuff off to get your level 3 sheet.
Like what?
So the level 3 sheet, there's a privilege sheet that you get for each, and you have to memorize what your previous level was and your new level's privileges and rules are, responsibility, and then recite it like an extra quote pretty much. It's literally like pretty much a quote.
Yeah.
And I remember I had to do that for level 3. And level 3 had a really long one. But I did it. I did a good job. I became level 3, and I think it was around this time that the state of Utah started getting involved, because this was when Paris Hilton came out and started talking about the abuse she had happened in treatment facilities. And so the state of Utah started going to all the treatment facilities. Treatment facilities were getting shut down like that. So a lot of things started changing in my facility. An example of one is we started to be able to talk at lunchtime. For 30 minutes, we were allowed to talk each day at lunch, except for on the weekends, which is kind of weird, right? And then we were done, and we started to get more free time. So normally we got free time on Saturday and Sunday, and normally once throughout the week, so we could talk. And that was pretty awesome, actually. And suspension was a little bit different. I think like they stopped doing the food thing, the bread and apples and cheese.
I remember like hearing random stuff like this. from like you or dad or something about how like you were so excited because now you were allowed to have like condiments at lunchtime or something. And
Yeah,
I was
like ketchup and mustard.
like,
in
what
a
the
ranch.
heck? Or like your timed showers, like you were able to get more time.
I got 1 minute longer each level.
And I was like, what the heck? I remember thinking that was kind of weird.
So yeah, I was actually thriving at level 3. I was doing really, really good. And I got to go on a 3-day visit with my dad. I was supposed to go with my dad's wife at that point too, because I would be living with them when I came back, but she did not come on that visit. So I wasn't allowed to advance to 4 yet, level 4. And I would say this was probably, I was at a year now. I had been there for a year. I had celebrated a birthday. And
what are you allowed to do on your birthday?
They just make you a cake at dinner and everyone sings happy birthday. And you can open the gifts if anybody sends you a gift.
Nice.
Yeah, it's actually kind of fun.
Is it true that you had to, if anybody sent you stuff in the mail that you had to share with everyone?
You had to have enough. So let's say you sent me like a normal sized bag of Skittles that you would get at Target. Mm-hmm. I couldn't have that. They would put it in my storage, in my bag that I came with.
For like when you leave?
Yeah, like a visit, or like you can have your stuff when you go on a visit and stuff like that. So if somebody wanted to send me something, they had to send me enough so that everybody would, so they can have it, and then it would be distributed during one of the meals. Yeah. So, but at level 3, I was actually thriving pretty well. I felt like I was doing really good. I started to really improve in my therapy aspect. And because, keep in mind, this facility, I'm literally going to visit there tomorrow. Like, I have friends there, and there were really good people there, and I made good lifelong relationships, and I gained skills. It was just certain things that also traumatized me. I remember at level 3, I told my therapist, I said, I think I'm bi or gay. And he goes, why do you think that? And he goes, I'm attracted to men. And he goes, if I look at this, he had a sculpture in his office. And he goes, if I look at this sculpture every day and I masturbate to this sculpture, well, every time I see that sculpture, I'll be aroused. He says, did you ever watch pornography of any sort? And I go, yes. And he goes, that's probably why you think you're gay. I don't honestly think you're gay. He goes, I accept you no matter what, though. He was Mormon, LDS. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. So I shoved it down and was like, I'm straight. And I finally, at the end of level 3, when I was transitioning to 4, we moved facilities to closer to here. We transferred everything. And
I'm just gonna say this. If Colin, my husband, were to be forced to masturbate to a naked man, he'd probably start crying and barfing. Yeah. Nothing would get up, okay? TMI, I'm just saying, yeah. He's not gay whatsoever.
Yeah. So I had just transferred to level 4, we had just moved facilities, and we now were allowed to speak at breakfast, lunch, and dinner for 30 minutes. And there was no such thing as suspension anymore. It was called
Was that just because of your level, or did the facility
had to change? And at this moment, a lot of people who were veterans like me, veterans were probably a year or more, they were like, this is crap, because now all the students are acting horrible, because they were, honestly, people would be cursing out staff now because there was no suspension. And I think, yeah, it was kind of crazy how easy it was at this point. But I was also level 4. I didn't care. I was so close to going home. But it actually took me a really long time to get my home values contract, or my 1-week visit. Home values contract is a rule book that you are required to follow once you go home after the facility, after you're graduated.
Yeah. So if he would go on, if my dad would drive to the facility or fly to the facility to pick him up and spend a few days with I remember there being 1 day, 3 day, and then a week. The last one was a month, right?
No, it's 2 weeks.
Oh, it's 2 weeks? Okay. But yeah, and there was a little handbook or rule book of all of the rules that you have to follow while you are outside the facility. And I was always super intrigued by the poppy seeds.
So poppy seeds have opiates in them.
Opioids?
And so every time you come back, you are drug tested This is like an intense drug test. Like,
so if you had like a poppy seed muffin, it would come back
as
like
that
you had opioids,
and they would put you on suspension and drop your level.
That's crazy to me.
And so, for example, one of my friends there, he had mustard from Red Robin, which contains poppy seed. He came back and tested positive. He had honey mustard with his chicken tenders on his one-day visit, and he came back, and he actually did not get put on suspension because he was not showing any signs of being
like high euphoric. Or something. Yeah.
And opioids are pretty intense, and he was not following any of the symptoms, and his parents like explained everything. So his parents called every single place that they ate at, and they found out that the mustard that they had it, and so he did not get on suspension or anything like that. He was good. But he did.
That's really kind though of his parents to like start calling
yeah.
the places and being like, hey, was there anything like, you know,
yeah.
that they were willing to do that for him, and then let the facility know, and that the facility was like trusting of that.
And we actually didn't have any phones there whatsoever, no technology actually. There was one desktop computer that had no Wi-Fi on it, and the only thing you were allowed to do it for is to write a school essay for like your 11th grade class, because there's a requirement in the state of Utah that you have to learn how to type on a certain thing. So that, and you have to actually ask the program director, and you have to be watched on it. Or if you're the highest level, you have to write something called synopsis, which is where you go to level 3, 4s, and 5s and say, have you noticed anything wrong in the facility that should be addressed? And they would say yes. You write it down, and you type it up, you put it on a USB, you print it out, and you give it to the program director. And that's pretty much what group is about, is he reviews how the facility's doing. Anyway,
so how did school work while you were there?
So school was from 2 to 6.
And were these like trained like teachers?
Yeah, so they actually were. They were pretty good actually. You could talk to the teacher in the classroom, and you can go really fast because we get syllabi, which is like a list of all your assignments, and you moved at whatever pace you wanted to. But if you didn't complete the minimum, you got an essay for a week's worth. Anyways. Eventually, it started getting really intense with the state, and they started coming in and interviewing students and stuff like that. And they would ask you to like out certain people and be like, what's going on? It almost seemed like the state wanted to try to shut us down. And eventually
I mean, if they're like hearing things about potential like abusive things, and if somebody like died and then there was a staff member who went to jail for cracking someone's head open, I'm sure that there's gonna have people from the state coming in and be like, give me the details, like, because like obviously, even though that there are facilities that have a lot of these like abusive things, it's not like the facility is not meant to run that way. That is not what is supposed to happen. Just so you know, with those, I have big brushes all together, and then I have little brushes together. So you just put a little brush in the big brushes, and I will be bothered. And yeah, there's that one, and same with that one. Yeah, you're best. Thank you. Thank you so much.
I don't think you did.
I'm super OCD. Sorry. So the facilities aren't legally supposed to be run that way. Like the state's not gonna be like, oh yeah, go ahead and just like kill people. You know, like that's not. And so when stuff like that happens, they're gonna have people come in and investigate, because that is not like the, you know, facility's fault. Like the idea of like a facility like this is meant to like help people to change. And so if you have staff there that do not have that mindset, and staff who just want to like hurt you, or like, you know, you are just treat you like you're a horrible person, then that's not what is meant to happen. So I feel like that makes sense that they would come in and say, hey, what's going on?
Anyways, at that point, they stopped CBO, so we could talk whenever we wanted about whatever, as long as we were in the room. If we were outside the room, we could talk about whatever we wanted whenever, unless it was no questions. And no questions was like...
I'm super lost.
Okay.
Hold on. You're allowed to ask questions at any point as long as you were in what room?
Your bedroom.
So you could talk whenever you wanted about whatever you wanted as long as you were in your bedroom?
Yes.
Okay.
If you were outside of the bedroom, it's also whenever, whatever, except for on no questions, which is like during chores.
So if it's like on the schedule that this is the time where you guys are doing chores, you're not allowed to ask questions.
Yeah, no, you can't just talk to them about whatever. You can only talk to them about chores.
Okay.
So you can't get off topic. And that's to kind of keep them productive. And this is the point of my program where, like, when I just hit level 5, pretty much. And I would go back to that program as a level 5, highest level in the facility, because I get the most privileges. And because I had just finished school too, because they stopped me from doing school because I was about to graduate, and once I finished up all my classes. So I wasn't doing school, so I had 4 hours of free time to play Monopoly with my friends during lunch. I meant during school, because we were allowed to talk about whatever we wanted, whenever we wanted. We could talk to people, so I made really good friendships. My least favorite staff left the facility, so I was vibing, and I wasn't getting essays left to write. I was almost getting 0 essays. I was the highest level in the facility, which meant I got to write synopsis. I actually enjoyed doing that.
What is that?
It's where you go around and ask the students, what do you think is wrong in the facility, and that's what's addressed in group. And then that's the thing, I got to type on the computer too. I got like 8 tablespoons of condiment. I never even used that one. That shit was crazy. I got like 9-minute long showers, so I literally would sit down for like 3 minutes and meditate in the shower.
Love that.
I know, and during my period of time, because I had so much extra time.
What I don't love is the idea of what's on the floor when you're sitting on that.
Oh yeah.
But I'm extremely OCD, and a lot of it stems from like hygiene related things.
Yeah.
There's more, like I said, please put the small makeup brush with the small ones, and because he put a small makeup brush in with my big makeup brushes, and I have big ones and small ones separate.
Okay. Anyways, and
Sorry.
I got to shower before everybody else because I was the highest level in the bedroom. I got to pick whatever bed I wanted, whatever shelf I wanted. So that meant after you shower, you go out to eat. So I got to eat before everybody, pretty much. I got hot water. Oh my gosh.
Wait, you couldn't have hot water?
No,
before
because
that?
everybody had showered, so it started to be cold if you were at level 1.
Oh, like
or
by
level
the time
2,
you
or even level 3 at some
like
bathrooms.
they ran out of hot water.
Yes, and I didn't have to wipe down because after the lowest level in the shower, because there was like 8 bathrooms, they had to wipe down the whole shower, and if there was 1 drop of water, even on the curtain, you had to start over.
How do you get the water off the curtain?
With towels.
Oh.
If you learn a process, you're actually good at it. I didn't even have the quote anymore because as you level up, I think level 3 is you only have to do 1 quote. Level 1, since you have to do that week's quote, the 700-word thing, and the weeks before that. Then levels 3s only have to do 1 week quote, so the week you get. Level 4s only have to do 1 week's quote every other week, and level 5s don't have any quote. Which is gives you so much time. I was living my best life.
So when you first got there, there are a lot of like more difficult things, harder like regulations and staff members, and then towards the end there were a lot of like facility changes and stuff like that, and you were leveling up, getting more privileges. So by the time you were like level 5 and all of those changes happened, you now were having good experiences there.
Like, I would go back there right now and live that life because it's actually pretty nice. You don't have to worry about social media or phones or anything like that. The food is pretty good. There's only like 1 bad meal a week normally. I love the staff. I also I got to go off campus once a week, every week on Wednesday, because I had the points and I required per activity, which is like you go off and got to do something with your friends. I watched movies, we watched movies more often. I didn't have to worry about school, and it was a thrive. And then I went on my 2 week.
Why didn't you have to worry about school?
Because when I was at my level 5, they stopped giving you school because you're about to graduate, and they don't want to have you in the middle of a class. They want you to fix.
Oh.
And get your transcripts ready. So I went on my 2 week visit. You're only a level 5 for maybe at most 2 months. Or less actually. I went on my 2 week visit, and I came back and they said, you're good. So I had 2 weeks left at the facility to make sure I didn't get too prideful, and then I graduated. Payton was at my graduation, but my parents weren't. I told them not to come. I was like, I'd rather graduate faster than have you guys have to plan to come down. That's literally what I told them. Because I wanted to be out there.
You would have had to wait to graduate.
Because they would have to get plane tickets and find a time where they could all come down.
And I took pictures for you and stuff.
And it was actually really good.
I live in we're really close to the same town where the facility was. So when he graduated, I was like, of course I'm gonna go. And I took my kids.
Oh my gosh, I love Anyways, I graduated and I went home and I didn't have a phone for like 2 months. I was like so respectful, but it was like in a bad way. Finally, I got out of the facility, and it was summer when I got out. I got out June 6th of 2022. And I went in Friday the 13th of September. Yeah, September 13th, 2020. And I came out June 6th, 2022. So I was in the facility for 19 months. And I've been out for probably around 10 now, almost 10, yeah.
And while he's here visiting me, he's actually going to the facility tomorrow because he wants to visit and see staff and friends and stuff. So, like, although there are some, like, memories that are not so good, he also has, like, really good memories, too.
Yeah.
I feel like it's just, like, life in general. Like, if you look back at, like, just growing up, like, there's going to be good times and bad times.
So I get back during the summer, and there's a family member that I'm constantly having contention with, and another family member who's always backing them. And this is bugging me. But I just got back from said facility where I was kind of brainwashed into constantly giving respect.
To authority.
To authority, and so that's what I did. Even though there were some hurtful things said. And towards the end of summer, the first experience where I was like, this doesn't seem right. I was hanging out with friends, and one of my family members came out to swim with us, who was younger, and I picked him up and threw him into the part of the pool as a joke, and he got my towel and threw it in the pool. And then the family member who I always have contention with came out and was like, what are you doing? And ended up bringing me inside and was like, that is horrible. I will never trust you with them again. That was horrible that you do that. That was like, I will never trust you with these family members again.
The person you threw in the pool, how did they react?
They were like laughing when they went and grabbed my towel, but
do you think that the family member got upset because the one you threw in the pool maybe like said he got like water in his nose, or that was scary or something like that? And
well,
maybe so
I think it was just in order. I don't know, but I just remember I was told horrible things. I was said that was disgusting. I remember being told I was never going to be trusted again. And I remember looking at one of my family members and going like, you're going to support me, right? Like, you're going to like look and realize. And he just sat there and nodded. He just sat there and nodded his head. And I was like, okay. And this time I fought back, but I ended up going and crying in my bedroom. And I was getting really mad, and both family members came into my room. Not the one I had thrown in the pool, but other family members came into my room and talked to me. And they said I would just be grounded for a week. And I was like saying something, and one of the family members goes, stop manipulating. Just give up. Just stop manipulating. And I was like, and I just started crying.
We didn't have grounding in our house growing up, so I'm interested in like your...
Grounding meant I lost my phone, and I couldn't hang out with people. Anyways, I just cried, and the family member was like, they're there, finally, you're not manipulating anymore. And I basically just gave up and was like, okay, I'll apologize. I'll stop. So that was one of the first times that it kind of was bad. Then I would say the next time, me and the family member who had contention would be off and on, but we were in there, and she had said something like, they had said something like,
you can hear Colin in the background playing with the kids.
The family member had said something like, I can't find this. And they said like, don't tell the other person I'm looking for it. Because they were like trying to quit caffeine or something. And I was like, oh, why would you want me to tell them? That's weird. I'm not going to keep anything from him. And at that moment he came and I was like, I'm not keeping anything from him. And she was like, why would you raise your voice? Why would you raise your voice? And she started yelling at me. And she's like, you're just trying to manipulate. You're trying to cause contention between us. And I'm like, you literally just told me not to tell.
You're too quiet.
And she's like, you literally just told me not to tell. I was like, you literally just told me not to tell him. So the family member was like, that's not true. I was joking around. You should have been able to take it as a joke. Keep in mind, this family member would always be like, I hate joking. I hate sarcasm. At that moment, I got in trouble for manipulating. I was told I manipulated. I needed to stop being a manipulator.
So what were you doing to make them say that you were manipulating?
The family member said that I raised my voice as soon as the other family member walked in to try to cause contention between them. When I said, you're trying to hide things from him, why would you want me to hide things from him? I gave up again. I was like, okay. I think situations like this just happened over and over and over. I kept giving up. And eventually, I made this friend. And so did my stepsister. Or my...
You could say that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really consider her my stepsister anymore because I don't live with them anymore. But at the time, we had the same friend, and I had a crush on that friend, that she was a girl. I still said I was straight at that point. And anyways, the family member was like, you guys can't have the same friend. It's gonna cause too much contention. And I was like, why can't we? And they were like, it's not gonna work. I'm not gonna work hard for you guys not to have to deal with this. And I was like, I was friends first then, but I'm okay with sharing. And she's like, no, you need to bow out gracefully. And I was like, I'm not gonna do that. And it started getting pretty intense. And my dad said...
If you're saying something good, it just depends on what you're saying.
Yeah, my dad said, wait till I get home for we to continue this. And the family member continued it after and started saying mean things. Eventually, they said, how do you think your mom would think of how you're acting right now? And I said, you will not speak to me in that way. You will leave sunshine. Sunshine is a phrase that we use in that house to stop anything.
It's like the safe word. Like,
yeah.
We need to, like, this is going too far.
Yeah. And
we need to stop. And it's
sunshine.
And
the family member walked downstairs and said, maybe that would work if you respected it. So I made another sarcastic remark. A family member that I really trusted and thought was going to actually support me did not. I supported that family member through things. When they had disagreements, I normally supported him and would be next to him and stand up with him and say, okay. And when he did that, that hurt. I basically told this person who I was really close to that I think I need to move out and that I need to leave and that I can't do this anymore. The next day I was pulled out of school and told that there was not to be any disrespect and no interrupting other people. And they gave me two options and I picked one of them. I was blamed for picking that option. I was said it was my fault for everything that's happened, that it's my fault that I'm trying to rip everything apart, that I manipulated, that the things that I do are disgusting.
This was after they gave you like two choices as how we're gonna handle all of this contention, and the one you chose, you felt like you were like
I was blamed.
put down for,
and I was given responsibility for something I should not have been given responsibility to handle. That was not my fault, that I did not have control over, and I chose the thing that I felt best for me. Moving forward, I was then told that I chose the wrong thing. They were not going to move forward with that option, that I would be to move different schools for my stepsister, and I went to a really bad school actually. I was told that the things that I do are not okay and to not continue speaking to these family members. I then said...
So you were told that while living in this household with like all of your family members,
to distance
there were certain family members you weren't allowed to talk to anymore.
So then I went to my room crying face down on my pillow and realized that I don't know what to do anymore. I don't know. I was told I would not be allowed to move out while still being blamed for things that weren't my fault. I was told I just needed to take responsibility, and I refused at this moment to continue letting myself be pushed around. I started having a panic attack and had to have the only family member I could really continue speaking to come into my room and calm me down, even though I still wasn't on good terms with him because he allowed me to be pushed around. Then I didn't know what to do. I had to start going to this new school. I did not have any really way to get home except for one family member would come pick me up, which normally was around 45 minutes after school would end. And I was in downtown for school. So my school was in downtown.
Why is that important? I
was about to get into it.
Okay.
Basically, it wasn't the best part of town, even though my town was like not like a bad town, but there would be kids who would get in fights every single day at my school and vape and smoke into your face in the bathroom, and all the bathrooms were closed off except for one, and it just wasn't a kept up campus. And I had just lost all my best friends. And every day I would come home and I would just go up to my room, and I couldn't close my door. I was never allowed to close my door. I was the only one who wasn't allowed to. And I would just...
So everyone in the house was allowed to close their door, but you were not?
Yes. And I was so done. And I ended up writing this huge thing in my phone about why I needed to move out, and I talked to a family member about it, and they were like, no. And I was like, I need a break from this.
They just said no, like there was no other context or like conversation.
They're
or
like,
anything?
They said like, there's no other option besides you being here. And I said, that's incorrect. I have people, which is my Aunt Katie, and she said, I'll let you come live with me. And they were like, no. And I was like, they were just like, I'm not gonna let you move out in the middle of the school year. Continue on, I refused to talk to anybody except for one of my family members. Even though I wasn't on good terms with them, I would not talk to anybody except for them. And I ended up going to this one lady in my church, and she was so super sweet. And she helped me out so much. Her name was Ellen.
This is someone who is Mormon or LDS?
Yeah, she was LDS. She was super duper sweet. I was literally at her house about 50% of the time at this point. I was always there with her son and her, and we would literally go and drive everywhere. She was the one who was probably picking me up from school most of the time. It was either her or my best friend Rachel's house, and I was with them all the time. And eventually, as she found out everything that had happened, she ended up getting involved, and everybody ended up sitting down and having dinner with each other. And then I went over to her Ellen's house, and she stayed and talked to all the family members. And she came home, and I could tell something was different. And I look at her, and she was refusing to tell me, but she was like laughing. I was like, you're so bad at lying. And I assumed she just like, I don't know.
Wait, she was lying to you?
Not lying, but like keeping something. The next day, I went over there first thing in the morning, and I like kind of pushed her more. I was like, what happened? And she's like, I don't know if I could tell you. I was like, what happened? I went over to my family member's house again, or my house again, and ended up helping one of my family members with something. And he said, you're moving in 2 days to live with your Aunt Katie in Utah. My heart
exploded.
I was like,
let me end it after this so that I can make a new video. Oh.
And I ran back to my friend's house. Then I literally ran in there, and she goes, he told you, didn't she? And I was like, yeah, perfect, I'm leaving. I was thrilled, so happy. Called Payton. I was like, Payton, I'm coming, and I'll be living 5 hours away from you. I'm literally coming. Then called my aunt. What?
It's like 3.5, 4 hours.
Okay. Then I called my aunt, not on the shuttle, it's longer. Then I called my aunt, and I was like, Auntie, and she's like, I know. And apparently it was supposed to happen in like, end of February, but it ended up happening earlier because this lady helped me. Ellen helped me.
Mind you, like throughout the whole process of like, you know, before you even knew you were moving and all the difficulties that you were having, you were keeping in contact with me and kind of like venting to me about a lot of stuff and would call me and this.
And I would send her more proposals, and one time I remember I sent her one, and she goes, God, something's off with you. Like, she was really worried because as she should have been, like, there were times where I was like, I'm done. I just don't want to wake up tomorrow. And I even told one of my family members that, and he said I would be placed on a 72-hour hold if I said that again.
Yeah. I mean, this family member who said that to you, like, talked with me about that too. And, like, it was strictly out of love, like, because he felt like you saying that, he was going to take that like completely seriously to make sure that you didn't do something like that to hurt yourself.
Yeah.
So that was fully out of love.
Yeah. I moved, and I remember Ellen came over and we spent till like 1 a.m. packing all my stuff one day.
She came over to help you?
Yeah,
That's
and
sweet.
her son did, who I was friends with. We just pack everything. In my room, I have so many decorations. I'm like a decorator whore. It's so bad. Sorry. And I just decorated. And I had to take all my decorations down. I was so happy and so ready. So then on February 14th, Valentine's Day, I did not go to school that day. I went to the orthodontist to get all my paperwork done, and then drove with one of my family members, who I wasn't on the best terms with still, but like still drove with, for 8 hours to Utah. It was fun. And we unpacked all my stuff, and then that family member left. And I kind of just was like, finally, I just felt like I didn't have to fight for life anymore. Like I didn't have to fight to keep myself protected and safe. Not like physically safe, but mentally and emotionally safe. So anyways, right before I came here, I had started coming out to some really, really close friends. I came out as bi, and that was because one of my best friend's moms sat down and talked with me about it, and she actually really helped me. And I started coming out to some really close friends, but that's it.
That's been here?
That was right before I came here, to one of my best friends, Rachel. I came out to her.
And her mom talked to you?
And her mom said, she was like, it's okay if you're bi or gay or whatever. And we just talked about it. Then I came here and I came out to Katie, my aunt, who I live with now. And Payton kind of has always known.
Yeah, I've always known that it would be something. I feel like I always just knew that you weren't straight, but I didn't necessarily know what that would turn into, if you were going to be like trans or something. I don't know. But I feel like since you were freaking out of the womb, but I mean, like, it was really easy to use the excuse with people that it's like you hung out with like mom and me and Riley most of the time, so that you really enjoyed like a lot of feminine things. But I mean, from the time you were like 2 years old, you'd tell people your favorite color was pink with sparkles. Which I know is like, doesn't have to mean that it's like gay or girly. Like you can just like that, but I mean like you just like, and you would say slay to people.
Slay is like my favorite word.
Always knew, and you'd be like, hi, like, hey. Easiest sentence. And it wasn't like you saw other people doing that all the time. That was just like how we were. And I know
I'm watched Shane Dawson.
I know I'm like totally throwing out like a bunch of stereotypes, but stereotypes are stereotypes for a reason. So it's like there were just things a lot where I kind of.
So I came out, and my aunt is fully LDS, and my uncle, who I also live with, because you know aunt and uncle means we're married. He's the bishop, and he's still one of the best men that I know. He actually might be the best man that I know, because he will fully admit that he does not know everything. He does not have the answers to everything, and he's okay with that. And I think he lives a really good life. So I came out to my Aunt Katie as bisexual, and she basically said, like, I will love you no matter what. I will support you in the decisions that you make, but I also think that you should pray about it, and I think you should read the scriptures on it. And she's like, have you read the Book of Mormon? And I have read the Bible front to back and the Book of Mormon front to back multiple times. No, Bible only once, Book of Mormon multiple times. And
that was like the family culture we grew up in, was we read like
and I had just recently done it, she's like, just keep doing it. And I just started crying. I was like, I think I know who I am. But she still said loving things to me and said, if you have a man who you love, I want to meet him. I want him to be in my house. I want to have dinners with him. And that warmed my heart a lot. And anyways.
She's told me that too. She's told, she kind of like treats me like a daughter sometimes now too, ever since our mom passed away. And this aunt is our mom's twin sister, so it's kind of like funny. You could like kind of still feel like you're physically seeing her a little bit. There's differences, but it's still kind of interesting. But Yeah, she always said that if anybody were to ever come out as gay or trans or whatever, like, even if they were like married into the family and not just like her own children, that please be careful of doing that. That they would always support us in anything, and will always love us, and will always be welcome in their home, and never want anything to be like hidden from them, and that we're always family no matter what. And she like specifically wanted to have like a sit down combo about it because that was really important to her. But like, again, as an active believing member of the church, like, she definitely has her beliefs in that area, but for her it will never like change how she feels about the people that she loves or anybody, like, which I think is very admirable.
Yeah. I then started hitting with a lot of depression because when I was living with my family before, when I was living with some of my family members before, I was just fighting constantly to be okay. I didn't really get the time to settle in and think about my past things. So my aunt noticed quickly, and we went to a doctor, and I got prescribed some anxiety and antidepressant medication just because I was having like horrid nightmares about things that would happen. Like, I would have nightmares that I was getting taken back to where I used to live, and I would wake up like crying, or I would not be able to go to school the next day because I was like so scared that somebody was going to pick me up at school. And
he's scared of being kidnapped, basically. Like, now he feels like he's in a safe place, and then he kind of got anxiety about like, basically, what if I'm kidnapped and taken away from where I'm finally safe
and go back. And a big thing was I couldn't go to sleep until I made a new plan for a new scenario. So I'd be like, if this person comes here, grabs me, and takes me with no care, like, this is what I would do. This is where I would go. Like, and I would just constantly create scenarios in my head to keep me protected. And I was so stressed out, and so I started getting put on some meds to help me out, and gonna start going to therapy pretty soon because I was just diagnosed with bipolar disorder, which just pretty much means I have a really quick high to lows, which could be anxiety, depression to rearrange my whole bedroom. And that could be an issue for me because I can go so quickly to the point where it could be 15 minutes, so I could start a new task. Like, I can start cleaning something and then I'll have to stop it halfway because it was all motivation. And it also affects...
Did you say bipolar disorder?
Borderline personality disorder, sorry.
I wasn't sure if what you said, but I wanted to make sure that it was right.
And so I definitely struggle with that, and I'm gonna start working through that, going to specialized therapy for that.
And that is known to be one of the most... it's like, it has the highest percentage of like cure rates over any mental illness diagnosis out there. So like borderline personality disorder, I can't remember the percentage, but it was in like 80s or 90s% like end up being cured from it and overcome it and no longer have it. So it's not something that's like wired into your brain or your system like bipolar disorder is. That's like this genetic thing that you can't control, and that's just how your brain is. You're not cured from it. Autism, it's how your brain is. You can't be cured from it. But borderline personality, in the same way as like depression and anxiety, you might be able to have a higher risk for it if you have family members who have it, but it's not something that's wired into your brain in a way where like it can never go away. Like you can heal from it through therapy and knowing what you're doing. I have previously been diagnosed with this and I no longer have it.
Anyways, I was scrolling through TikTok one day and I came upon a Mormon Stories TikTok. And I was like, this is interesting because I've always been on and off with the church. I've always been progressive just because I'm bisexual. But I came upon a Mormon Stories podcast. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is kind of a slay. So...
Why?
What do you mean?
What was it?
I don't remember. It was just them talking about something, and I was like, I so agree with that. So I find out, I listened to my podcast app on my iPhone, And I went on there and I looked them up. I realized they have like 1,892 podcasts or something.
That's a lot. He's been doing it for like 15 years or
I
something
know.
like that.
And then I just binge watched them. I think I listened to 3 podcasts in a day. And that's insane.
And that's insane for his videos because he's got like 4-hour-long ones and stuff like that.
And I would literally be at work with my AirPods in just listening. I could not stop listening to it. Anyways, I came upon one podcast in particular, and I was still like, okay, this is just kind of weird. Until I came across a particular podcast in which he mentioned one of his older ones. So I literally went to the break room immediately and researched it. And it was Jeff or Todd something. And it was the Second Anointing. Just look up Mormon Stories podcast, Second Anointing, if you want to listen to it.
That's what it's called?
Yeah.
The episode?
Yeah, and there's multiple part series. I think it's like a 5 or 4 part series. And I think it's like episode 563. Something like that. It's pretty close to there. And I was shocked. There was this man in the church, so strong in the church, became bishop, moved, became bishop again, became stake president, had met with, who did he meet with? Do you know who it was?
I haven't seen this one.
He met with somebody who's in the apostles now.
A member of the 70?
Yes. No, a member of the apostles.
The 12.
The 12.
Member of the apostles.
He literally then eventually was invited to go. I'm going to talk about this ordinance because of how private it is and how...
You do have to say, allegedly, because the church does not acknowledge this.
Allegedly, from many sources, there is an ordinance in the temple in which you go in and you are told that as long as you don't murder somebody, you will enter into the celestial kingdom.
No matter what you do for the rest of your life.
So therefore, you could verbally abuse somebody, steal money, hide money in shell corporations, hide $32 billion into shell corporations even though you're a $232 billion company. That puts your money towards ending abortions and stopping gay marriage, like hypothetically. Just listen to some Mormon Story podcasts and you'll know what I'm talking about. But you go in and your feet are washed by a area president and you are blessed. Then you and your spouse go into another room in which the spouse washes your feet, the female, and gives you a blessing on whatever she finds as normal or whatever she thinks is...
Wait, the female gives a blessing?
The female gives a blessing to the male.
There's females that do lay their hands on your head and do blessings in the temple too. Like, I mean, from what I've done.
Cray.
Yeah.
And that is just like cray. Nobody knows about this. There's secret buildings inside the temple meant for this. And this is where I'm like, oh my gosh.
Secret buildings in the temple?
Secret rooms in the temple meant for this, which that sounds kind of cultish, right? Am I wrong? Just to me, that kind of sounds weird. That there's like hidden rooms, and this is just all alleged, but I believe it 100%.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah. And
because I want to be respectful.
I was just shocked. And I went down a rabbit hole. And I immediately went into my break room and texted Payton. And I was like, Payton, give me every podcast you know that you really want me, that I could listen to get information.
Yeah, he was telling me that he's been listening to Mormon Stories and that it's like blowing his mind. And I was like, oh, no way, because I didn't know that he really knew about this podcast. And I was like, I really love that podcast. And he's like, I love it. He's like, send me ones that you like. And I was like, if you're serious, like, I really will. And he's like, no, seriously, please send me them. And so I went in and I made a little playlist that it's hidden on my YouTube page, so you can't see it unless you have like a link to it, because I made it unlisted.
Yeah.
But I created a little playlist of some of the ones that like probably made the biggest impact on me. Some of them made a big impact on me that moved me closer to the church. One of them, the one with the bishop's wife, I don't know if you watched that one yet. No. That one actually gave me like hope that I could maybe potentially stay. So it wasn't like I was just trying to give him like all of these things. It was just, these were the ones that like made the biggest impact on me, whether like in either direction.
Yeah.
They just are ones that genuinely feel like they changed my life in learning about that information. And so it was maybe like probably less than 10.
Yeah,
maybe
it was like I think 7 or 8.
Yeah, 7 or 8 videos. And
I clicked on, I like scrolled through to kind of see them, and I wasn't so interested in polygamy that much. That's like a lot of them in there were about polygamy for her. So I clicked on one that I was like interested in, and it was called the CES letter.
There's a girl who
she was the one who wrote the book about how she left the church and came back.
Yeah, and it was sold in Deseret Book.
Yeah.
But then she ended up leaving the church again, and they pulled her book, so it's not in Deseret Book anymore.
And nobody knows really that much about the CS letter, but it's pretty much a 100.
Well, people know.
Yeah.
But a lot of people in the church have never heard of it. But people who have left, a lot of them know about it.
So it is probably one of the biggest turning points when people read it. It's normally like a big and final turning point. And Payton didn't like push it on me because I just asked to recommend some podcasts. When I heard about it, I was like, I wonder if I could find that. I went and bought YouTube Premium so that I can listen to the audiobook of it in the background throughout that 2 first periods of school.
So it gets, because in the beginning of the video I said that I never said anything to you about a CES letter, but I guess technically I did push it in your direction by sending you that Mormon Story podcast. That wasn't necessarily intentional. It was just, I was just sending you the ones, because that whole podcast episode was not just about the CES letter. That whole podcast episode was about like freaking 18 billion different things.
Yeah, so they actually really didn't mention it.
She of course they mentioned it.
Well, I know, but
it wasn't like the whole idea of the entire podcast. It was just a section of it where they talked about it. So I guess technically I did give him information that talked about it, but that wasn't necessarily intentional. So I'm just realizing that right now, because I thought like he just found this all on his own. But
I basically went in, found the CS letter in a PDF version, and it's pretty much all of the gospel doctrine essays compiled together and extra research into that.
I don't think it's all of them.
Well, it's
I mean, you could spend like months in the gospel topics essays.
So this book was about 132 pages. I think it took me about 2.5 hours, I think.
It used to be shorter, but it's been expanded upon and adjusted over time. Like there were some things in the original document that he ended up actually getting like really good answers to and took them out, or at least talked about like how I did actually now learn information as to like how this makes sense or something. But it's been expanded upon as like more and more questions come up, and he anyway, people can research it themselves if they're interested. But.
So I think I read the entire 132 page book in about 2.5 hours. I literally took the audiobook version on YouTube Premium, set it to 2 times speed, opened my MacBook PDF, and I read the whole thing.
So you listened to it and followed along.
Yeah, so I can get it done as fast as possible. And I texted Payton, I was like, holy this is cray. I was like, this is cray. And this is the biggest turning point for me. Joseph Smith did not read and translate from the golden plates. He took a rock and put it inside of a hat and transferred it from pieces of papyrus.
He put it in a hat.
He put it in a hat, looked in the hat, translated from pieces of paper, and the translations that he put from the pieces of paper are incorrect. They have been taken and looked and said that the symbols that he translated are incorrect. It is then shown that the Book of Abraham is almost completely incorrect. This hat and stone that he also used for treasure hunting, which was a scam.
It's folk magic that during this time, culturally, a lot of people believed in it. And there were plenty of people who said it was crazy too. Like Thomas Jefferson, I mean, this was before Joseph Smith's time, but even talked about like this whole folk magic and seerstone and all of this stuff. And he's just like, it's all a scam. This is dumb. Anybody who does it, like, this is dumb. Like, he said that. And this was before Joseph Smith's time. And by the time Joseph Smith's time got there, there are still people who have like big feelings like this is a scam, but there are still plenty of people who fully believed in it as well as he was participating.
There are 5 different versions of the first vision in which Joseph Smith has said he has seen 1 being, 2 beings, added Satan in there. Joseph Smith had 31 wives, one of the youngest which was he convinced at 14. Emma, his wife, did not know about this until after.
Did not know about the 14-year-old or any of them?
Any of them until after. So he created polygamy. Many of the things that are said to be doctrine, never changing, because doctrine is never changing in our church, is what is said.
Many of the like original teachings from Joseph Smith and Brigham Young doctrine that is supposed to be never changing has changed. And
polygamy,
which is good. I mean, in the sense that like,
but doesn't
the stuff was
It's
just kind of like one of those back and forth things. Like, how can you say this when this happened? And there's always just like a, you know, God's the same yesterday, today, and forever. Oh, but we're like a continued revelation, and then like, oh, but you can't like if any of the dead prophets like scratch everything they said, like you only listen to me kind of thing.
Yeah, but
and
then
like,
that doesn't make sense, because if those prophets are wrong, we were told to listen to them, and if we didn't,
why should I listen? Why should I listen to this prophet if 2 years from now you're gonna die and they're gonna tell me that everything you said was garbage and now here's what I said? And it's kind of like weird.
For example, in the bishop questions, one of them is, do you sustain our prophet as the only key holder of the, like as the fundamental key holder?
The main.
Brigham Young taught in the temple the Adam God theory, basically that Adam, the first man on earth, was to be God, and we are now told that that is incorrect. However, if a person then didn't believe him, then they couldn't go to the temple.
Brigham Young also taught that monogamous relationships were of the devil, and that you had to have polygamous relationships, polygamy. And what's interesting is the church says that we don't practice polygamy anymore, but that's not true according to eternal life. Yeah. Because like right now with like how mom passed away and dad remarried, in heaven, like the way the church teaches it is that he would now live in heaven in his eternal home with his current wife and mom. But
those women cannot have that for them, because for a woman to get married to another man, she has to cut off. She has to get it undone.
Yeah, so like Colin's mom, her husband passed away, and if she were to want to remarry a man in the temple, she would have to completely cut off her sealing from before, because she can't be sealed to 2 men in heaven.
Yes, but a man doesn't have to.
So the church says we don't practice this anymore, but it's like, it is.
Yeah, it's incorrect. And basically another thing is the Book of Mormon I don't believe to be true. I've never had a big testimony in it, but the CES letter cut it all off. The Book of Mormon has many places and people who are in direct correlation to Joseph Smith's life. The Book of Mormon has hundreds of direct quotes from the King James Version of the Bible, which doesn't make sense, because if the Book of Mormon came from old doctrine before the King James Version of the Bible, and Joseph Smith was directly translating, it doesn't make sense.
Well, that's talked about in the church about, I mean, the church acknowledges that there's stuff from the King James Version of the Bible in the Book of Mormon, and they acknowledge that just fine, like that the teachings are true, and you know.
Yeah, but it doesn't make sense, because they say that the stuff comes from the golden plates, or what the prophets wrote, but all of that stuff happened before the King James Version of the Bible came out. So how are there direct quotes?
Because it is explained. I'm not saying that I believe this.
Yeah.
But it is explained that this information is true and of God, and the church also believes in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so this information was true way back then. It was true during this part of the King James Bible, and it's still true now.
Yeah.
And so it's like the information is spread exactly through God, and that's why. And like Joseph Smith Sr., Joseph Smith Jr.'s dad, has talked about and has written about Joseph Smith having these stories when he was little about how he would write about like Native Americans like coming to he wrote about these Book of Mormon stories as a child, which I'm sure if the church talked about it, I have never heard this, but I'm sure that the church would say that like, because he was chosen, like he knew of these stories before anything, like when he was little. I'm sure that that's something that they would say. But he wrote, like, Lehi's first vision in the Book of Mormon is directly from Joseph Smith Sr.'s dream. So Joseph Smith Sr., this is Joseph Smith Jr.'s dad, had this dream of the first vision of the fruit and the iron rod and the, what's it called? The great and abominable, like chili. He had this dream, and he told this dream to Joseph Smith, and it was like this huge faith promoting dream in their family. And then Joseph Smith went on to write this exact same story with different names and said that it was like basically translation from the plates. And I'm sure still that if the church were to ever acknowledge that they would say it's because like he knew and he had that in him.
But so that's what they're saying about the King James Version of the Bible and the Book of Mormon, is that God, they say, oh, it's just an even bigger thing, like, to show that it's true because God showed Joseph Smith this.
So basically I believe that the Book of Mormon was written by Joseph Smith. Not translated or any type of like spiritual power or revelation. I believe that he wrote it.
No, so that's what I think he did too, but I don't think it's true.
Well, yeah, that's
Another thing that I realized, I'm gonna pull it up. Okay, the song called "Choose the Right"
in the LDS primary hymn book. Is it primary or is it just the main one or both?
Both, I think. I don't know. And basically, it's like choose the right. And it says, when in the right your heart confides, choose the light. Let no spirit of digression overcome you in the evil hour. There's the right and the wrong to every questions. Be safe in spirit and spiritation's power. Choose the right. Let wisdom mark the way before. Choose the right. There is peace and righteousness. Choose the right. There is safety in the soul. Choose the right, and all your bores you are pursuing. Let God in heaven be your goal. Most people are like, oh, that's so sweet. The Spirit to guide you. Didn't the Spirit guide Brigham Young, who were said to not follow anymore? And it just, all these things together.
I'm a little bit confused at what you're saying.
Basically, it says, let the Spirit guide you to know what's right and wrong.
Yeah, that's like probably one of the biggest things that the church teaches.
However, it connects you and pulls you straight to the church, because you're to go to your bishop when you think you're doing something wrong, and then the bishop is the one who gives you the answers.
Well, yeah, so it's saying choose the right and let the Spirit guide you, but they tell you what the right is.
Yeah.
So if the Spirit guides you to something, which the Spirit is, in my opinion, your intuition.
Yes.
If that guides you to something that is against the church, like, yes, I really do like women.
Yeah.
As a woman, then you're wrong and you are not faithful and you're not spiritual, and there's something that you're doing wrong that's not allowing the Spirit to be within you, and you're actually listening to Satan, even though it felt like a really good, warm thing to you.
And so how are we supposed to trust?
They tell you what's black and white.
And it just makes it to the point where you don't know who to trust, because revelation is constantly changing, doctrine is constantly changing, and we've been told that past prophets are wrong to trust the ones now, but it's crazy. And I was just like, oh my goodness. And I think there's the song "I'm a Child of God" is like, if you don't follow this, you're done, or like there's some part of it. I am a child of God, and He has sent me, has given me an earthly home with parents kind and dear. Lead me, guide me, walk beside me, help me find a way.
Teach me all that I must do to live with Him someday. That's what the line is that Mormon Stories talked about. Teach me all that I must do to live with Him.
Yeah.
So it's like you have things that you have to do in order to be in your loving, most understanding God who feels everything that you feel, who knows everything that you're going through, can feel it all, and yet damns you to hell if you don't do everything
and then listen
exactly
to this.
as I say.
Help me to understand his words before it grows too late. So if you have any doubt, you better not let it, because they never tell us when Satan's coming and when all of this bad stuff's gonna happen, and so we better always listen to what they say.
Mind you, I just want to say that anything that I have said in this video does not mean that it's you completely agree with everything I say, and everything that he says in this video doesn't mean I completely agree.
Yeah.
Like, we're giving each other free space to share our opinions.
Yeah.
And just like Mormon stories will say, I do not, like, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, I do not want anybody to take my word or your word for anything as 100% truth and fact and whatever. Like, I would rather have them go and seek out and look at the evidence and all of the documentation and the things that the church admits are true and all of these things, and decide for yourself. Because there are plenty of people who know all of this information, who've read the CES letter, who know all about all this stuff. They've seen Joseph Smith's court trials, the fact that he was like manipulating the parents to marry a 14-year-old, and know that this is true. God. The stone in the hat, like, there are people in the church who know all of this and have seen all of the evidence and still have full faith and trust in the gospel and are in the church. So I don't want people to listen to my opinions and what I have to say based off of all of this and just like let that sink in with them and take that. Same with when I would watch Mormon stories, like, it would make me feel like very big, deep emotions, but it led me to do my own research. So that's what I want other people to do, because you may look up all of this stuff and find all of the documentation and still decide to remain faithful in the church. So I don't want people to just listen to how I feel about all of it.
Totally. Because then we would be no better than the thing that we don't believe in. We would be reinforcing that you should just trust what we say, and then it would be the same thing. And I agree the same way. I just feel that if you should do your research.
And you're still learning.
Yeah, I'm still learning.
I'm still learning.
And so basically after I found all this out, I stopped believing in the LDS church, and I was like, maybe it's Christianity. But then I kind of started looking at biology, and where it says there was no life before 6,000 years ago. But then we have carbon dating, scientifically shown that there literally was life over 6,000 years ago. And then I read this paper, which is stamped by Columbia scientists. It's like, this is proven, this is true. And it's like there's not even a 0.1% chance that the Bible is correct. It's 100% proven, 100% proven that it's not correct.
This is something that we haven't talked about at all. I have not said anything to Conrad about this, but Colin did the same thing where he moved on to Christianity after he pulled his records. He literally spent money on this nice freaking Bible, and I was like, oh my gosh, what if he doesn't even keep up with this? Like, I was out loud, like, very supportive to him, but I remember being like, dude, we don't have money. but like, he went and he was reading the Bible every day, like, and talking about things that he found so fascinating and interesting in it. And then it turned into, what the frick am I reading? Like, about like someone, there's a passage in there that talks about how like this guy was walking by and
saw Bigfoot.
No, the kids came out and were calling him like Baldy and talking about his bald head. And so this guy, like, with his like, I don't know, priesthood power or something, I can't remember, like with his like connection to God, had like these wild beasts sent down like to come and like murder all of these kids for calling him Baldy. Now, mind you, I'm being like so dramatic and exaggerative about this, but it really is. The kids were calling him Baldy, and that these things came down to like maul them to death is literally what it was. And I posted it on my Instagram stories recently, so I could go find it and show it to you. But it's a screen recording that Colin, or no, I think it might just be a screenshot. But I put it in my Instagram stories, and I was like, for anyone who believes in the Bible, do you ever read this and say like, no, it's 100% true, this is 100% fact, or do you say, this is super weird? Also, and I had people vote. Yeah. But Colin moved away from that because he did learn that it has been completely scientifically proven that the Bible is completely made up of fictional stories.
Yes.
And that some of these people that they talk about may have walked the earth.
Yeah.
But there might have been somebody that people assumed were a savior. There might be people who had these names or did certain things.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like how you're like, I could use the name Conrad and say that he has these like hazel eyes and is this tall and lives in Utah, but then everything else is wrong. You know, we're like, you did exist, but no, you didn't like dress up as a clown and go knock on people's door and say, Satan's coming to get you tomorrow. Like the weirdest stuff. Like, and I was so dramatic and probably really rude, and I'm sorry. So then, that, but
after I learned that the Bible wasn't correct, I was like, okay, maybe I just believe in God. And then I was like, God and Satan, right? Then I realized, I thought about it, I don't believe in Satan. Because that's kind of a horrible idea. Like, you tell your children, like, hey, if you don't follow the commandments, if you don't do what's said, you will go to a place where your teeth will be gnashed and you will be burning it forever. And you can never get out of there. Hello?
It sounds like something that you say to, like, scare little kids into
like
doing what you want. It sounds like it's like you want your kids to do something, so you use, like, fear tactics to get them to do it.
Yeah. And so I just was like, there's no way I believe in that. Like, that just doesn't make sense, a loving father. And then I realized, I was like, then I kind of was talking with Payton about it, and she didn't put the idea in my head because I've been doubting if God was real for a while now. But she explained that how we used to think that lightning from the sky was the Greek god Zeus throwing his lightning bolt and crushing mountains.
No, I used to think that.
No, like that's what used to be
like
thought.
Greek mythology, way long time ago. People used to think that lightning was coming from a Greek god Zeus.
Yeah.
That he was like shooting this lightning down. And it's because so many years ago, with the amount of access to information and knowledge and technology and anything was so limited that they only had the ability to see and believe a certain amount of things. And as so much time has passed on and we have the internet and scientists and technology and stuff to actually scientifically learn these things, and we know so much more about outer space now and all of these things because of the technology we have today, and it's now disproving these things, but people are like, no, this is, I believe this for so long, I'm connecting to this, like this is you know, I don't necessarily think people are being stubborn. I think it's repetitive behavior that programs your subconscious mind into feeling like you know that it's true.
So basically and then I realized, I was like, I know how it feels to think about death and how there could be nothing, or even how it could be forever, and how scary that is to me. So maybe somebody else felt that and they had to make up an explanation and not feel that way. And then that was just drawn on with, because that's pretty nice to think about. You go to heaven and it's this amazing thing, but it just doesn't really make that much sense. So that's kind of where I'm at now. And I don't know if I believe in God, but I just think it's something I'm gonna have to keep working through and thinking about. And
that's a really healthy way to think about it, I think, because some people feel like you need to be on one side or the other, and it's like, can you let me like be in a state of not knowing and just being able to take in new information and learn as I go?
Because guess what? You actually don't know. You will never know, because it's stuff that we can't,
you can't scientifically prove.
Except for some things that are literally scientifically proven. But
it's not like I wasn't about to say you can't scientifically prove anything, but I'm just saying there's no way you can scientifically prove whether God exists or not.
Yeah, and so that's something that I will never know, but I'm just trying to figure out what I believe. And that's
people will say they know even though they don't know. They just think that they know.
And that doesn't make sense because it's called faith for a reason. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but I'm actually in a really good place in life where I can work through these things, and that's what I'm grateful for. And that's what I'm happy for, is that I can work through my life choices, and I have somebody who I can talk to, and I have these resources I can go and look towards, and that's what's important to me. And it's just like, thrive and believe in what you believe in. Don't believe in what other people believe in just because it's like someone you care about. Believe in what you want to be true. Be your own queen or king or they or whatever you think to be true. Follow through with that and live your life to what you think is right, okay?
Yeah.
Now don't kill people just because you think it's right. Like that's called psychotic, but like if it doesn't affect other people and it's just like you personally, like never let anybody tell you that, because that's like you, like
create and live your own path.
Be an icon because that's who you're meant to be, okay?
You know what Dad told me? Dad told me that he wouldn't want or suggest that anyone should stay in a religion or church that they don't believe in.
Yeah.
So he told me he felt like when it comes to the commandments, he says that he believes that there are like two main big things.
He's actually taught me this growing up, and it's one thing
important.
I like.
And he says that as long as you are loving one another and serving one another. There was another thing. Do you remember what
it's love God.
Oh, he didn't tell me that.
Oh, maybe I.
But it was just about like, as long as you love thy neighbor and serve one another.
Yeah.
That those are like, when you're doing those two things, like you're ultimately living a good life.
Yeah.
Because you can't steal from a store and be doing one of those things, or from a friend. You can't lie to somebody and be doing those things. So if you are loving your neighbor and serving everyone, that those are like the two most important things. And it just like really softened my heart. And it's like one of the reasons why I think we are so connected right now is because he's been able to be like so open and loving and understanding to everything that I'm going through, even if he doesn't agree or believe. And he like has actually affirmed me in explaining the way that I'm feeling, and like what I heard, how I feel about it, and why. He's like affirmed me in that and has been like, you explain so well, and I can totally see like how you see it that way, and that makes sense. And he's like, it didn't change the way that I believe, but I can definitely understand why you would see it that way. And that like makes me feel so good. Right. And he'll tell me too, he's like, don't feel like you have to walk on eggshells. Don't feel like you have to sit and say, I don't want to offend you, or I'm so sorry, or I'm not trying to attack. He's like, I know that's not what you're doing. Yeah. And he's like, and that's why we're getting so much closer, because I'm going through something so hard that I was actually so nervous to tell him about, because I just thought that it would break his heart. Knowing that I've probably been like one of the most faithful, active members of the family, our whole life. And so I always felt kind of like almost highly favored because I was living in a way that he agreed with. And so I was nervous to tell him because of that, and the fact that he's been so loving about it. Like I could seriously cry, because I haven't really had that from a lot of people.
Yeah, it's so good for you.
No.
I love that you can have that relationship with him.
I'm so lucky. I'm sorry that you're having some difficulties, but I understand. I've heard some of the things that, you know, he's talked about, and I think it's definitely like a hard situation when you're trying to, I don't know, I don't want to get into it.
I'm living my best life right now. And I was so happy to be able to be here with Payton on this podcast with you guys today and chat with you all. And John from Mormon Stories literally sponsor us, or like not even sponsor us, but like invite us to the show or separately or whatever, because you're my icon. And let's thrive. Y'all just thrive, okay? Thank you.
Let's get this lighting.
Okay. Y'all just need to thrive and be who you are, okay? And literally, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, feel free to put it in the comments, because I'm gonna check the comments of this video. If you would like to reach out, you could totally DM Payton and she will reach out to me.
You don't have social media where they
I change my social media every single day because I'm borderline personality.
Don't just like take that and look at all the symptoms of this disorder and decide, okay, this is what I am, and affirm yourself and manifest that every day.
Yeah, wait, why do you
just
look
live
at
your
that?
life how you want? Because it's on autofocus.
Autofocus on me. Oh my gosh. Okay. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day. Bye-bye.
I love you guys. Be yourself. Don't ever just listen to people on the internet and take their word for it. Do your own research, but it does feel good to feel like the things that you're thinking about and doing, you're not alone in them, and that's really natural and normal, and a lot of people go through this, and it can go in either direction, and whatever it is probably meant for you. And I love you guys, and leave a comment if you want, and subscribe and like this video if you're not, and I'm sorry the lighting got bad. Bye.